Good morning, St. Kitts and Nevis. It's Saturday morning, and welcome to another edition of Inside the News. As per usual, I am Jermaine Abel sitting in with you, keeping you company on what seemingly is a very warm Saturday morning. Yeah, Sharon, it's very warm outside. There are about two or three cruise ships in, so it's going to be a busy period in downtown Bastia today. It has been a very, very busy news week here in St. Kitts and Nevis, across the region and internationally. But before we jump into it, we have to acknowledge the people who make the program possible, TDC and Carib Brewery, and then we'll be right back and continue with more Inside the News.
More than 42 million cars from 19 different car companies are being recalled for faulty airbag inflators. Repairs are fast, easy, and free. The problem isn't with the airbag, it's with the airbag inflator. Because the inflator can rupture, shooting shrapnel through the airbag, which can cause serious injury or even death. Don't risk it, fix it.
Please contact TDC Automotive Division to find out if your Toyota vehicle is affected by the Takata airbag recall. Visit or call us at 465-2511 in St. Kitts or 469-5430 in Nevis.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly. People make the world go
And we are back here on Inside the News. As I normally say, when I'm in the hot seat, we tend to go beyond the headlines to discuss issues and their implications for us as people living in St. Kitts and Nevis. And, a lot of what we've been seeing in recent times have been geopolitical issues impacting and influencing our day-to-day decision making here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And again, we had more developments overnight. Many people would have seen the reports published by the New York Times, which basically indicated that St. Kitts and Nevis has been placed on a list of potential countries Trump has either earmarked for possible bans or some level of visa restrictions. Winterfam has not confirmed that. The New York Times have been speaking with their sources within the State Department, and that report basically indicated that, there are discussions about countries being on a list there for potential ban and some level of visa restrictions. It's still a report that is being further investigated by the news department here. So that will probably be further discussed at some time later in when confirmation comes or does not come. But like I said, that's the New York Times report pointing to a possible indication that St. Kitts and Nevis could have some level of restriction. This followed upon a report that was published by NBC back in December, which indicated that the United States, and that was prior to the Trump administration, they did indicate in their report at the time that the Trump administration was eyeing Caribbean territories, and they earmarked Grenada and the Bahamas as potential, Grenada, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and several others, including Panama, to house third-party deportees. When the Prime Minister was asked about that specifically, he did indicate that, there was no correspondence sent over to St. Kitts and Nevis at the time to suggest that St. Kitts and Nevis was approached. Grenada was approached earlier this year, but, Deacon Mitchell did indicate that Grenada was not in a position to accommodate such, and the Bahamas had also indicated that they were not in a position to basically accommodate such a request. Guyana has been approached. Um, their president has been speaking upon that particular matter. He spoke about it recently. Said no firm or concrete decision has been made regarding that. So, yes, there's a lot of developments in the news. We also had earlier this week the OAS meeting where the first Caribbean representative to head the Organization of American States to replace the outgoing representative from Argentina, I suspect. Yes. Yes. So St. Kitts and Nevis, through their support behind the Surinamese ambassador, Albert Ramdien, who foreign affairs minister, who is now the head of the OAS, but he will formally take up that position later on this year in May. We also had Dr. Douglas sharing St. Kitts and Nevis' support for not just him, but also reaffirming their support for the OAS and made calls for changes among other things. We also heard from St. Kitts and Nevis' ambassador to the OAS and the United States, Her Excellency Jacinth Henry Martin, who reaffirmed St. Kitts and Nevis' support for women's rights and equality in the women's rights, and also from the perspective of the Western Hemisphere. So there was a lot. But there was also a development overnight into this morning in neighboring Antigua and Barbuda. We know what has been going on there. They have seen a number of persons disappearing over there, and the latest case involved a 9-year-old child who disappeared earlier this week. Well, it's sad to report that they found her body early overnight into this morning, and the Prime Minister issued a statement over there. The Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, while at the hospital seeking care for his sick infant daughter, was informed that the child abducted 100 feet from her home on Wednesday afternoon, March 12th, has been murdered. The information terrified the Prime Minister, who has joined in prayer with his spouse to seek God's protection of the missing 9-year-old. The Prime Minister relays his sad condolences to the mother and father of Chantel Crump, her many other siblings, her many other family members, her school friends, and to the entire nation over this senseless act of cruelty and disregard for the life of an innocent child. The members of the Royal Antigua and Barbuda Police Force have done a creditable job in pursuing all leads and have come to this conclusion based on evidence. The police will relay their findings to the nation in the waking hours of Saturday morning, today, when the details will be released. The nation of Antigua and Barbuda rejects this cruel and inhumane act. The entire population is eager to bring the perpetrators to justice and peace to the family who has suffered a tragic loss. Yes, so that's what's happening over in Antigua and Barbuda this morning. The territory is mourning that senseless act over there. Internationally, we know what has been going on with Donald Trump and United States. He escalated a trade war, threatening the United Nations. He's threatening the European Union and certain countries in terms of exports coming out of Europe with wine and several other categories of food supplies or goods rather. In terms of jacking up the tariffs to 200%, and Europe and Canada are not backing down on that specifically. So yes, you're up to date with some of what has been transpiring across the region, locally and internationally as well. This morning, we will listen to a few of the presentations from earlier this week in terms of St. Kitts and Nevis reaffirming its support for the OAS as well as women's rights, and we'll begin the discussion there. We also take a look at the issue of potential visa restrictions based on the report by the New York Times. In the second half of the program, around 11 o'clock, we will be joined by the Nevis Reformation Party's Dr. Patricia Bartlett, where we will focus on issues impacting Nevis and national issues as well. One thing I didn't mention, and this is something that was very interesting. Earlier this week, Trinidad and Tobago had the UK impose or reimpose visa restrictions on them because of the level of asylum seekers that have been turning up in the country. But strikingly, our colleagues in Trinidad and Tobago went a bit further, and in their investigations, they have found that a lot of gang members have been seeking asylum in the United Kingdom, and they're being financed by, or allegedly being financed by, business operations in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, based on the statistics that the UK border officials published, there were more than, or just approximately 800 asylum cases in from Trinidad and Tobago. We have the numbers for St. Kitts and Nevis. We have the statistics, but we're still diving deeper into them. Based on the early numbers that I've seen, it's probably around 30 to about 50 or 60 thereabout. And this was from 2001 up until 2024. So yes, that's an interesting piece of dynamics, an interesting piece of dynamic that we're seeing down there. But yes, it's an interesting period that we have right now. So you're up to date with some of what has been transpiring both locally, regionally, and internationally. Well, now we will hear a little bit from Prime Minister Dr. Terence True, who has been facing mounting pressure to address the Cuba situation, where potentially the government officials and their immediate family members could be impacted and have their visas revoked because of what transpired. Because we and other territories within the Caribbean region have benefited and continue to benefit from the Cuba issue. Yes, you would have heard a little bit of that in the news, and you would have earlier this week, and you would have also heard from Prime Ministers Rowley, Dr. Keith Rowley, and CARICOM Chair and Barbados' Prime Minister Mayor Motley on their stance and their position when it comes to this whole issue of visa revocation based on us having the the Cuban Medical Brigade here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Well, the Prime Minister actually addressed that last night in a short speech to the nation that was published on social media. So I'll give you a little bit of what he said he had to say regarding this particular matter.
Fellow citizens and residents, today I address an issue that strikes at the heart of who we are as a nation and as a people, the issue of Cuban healthcare professionals working in our federation. The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis has always upheld principled and respectful relations with all nations, including the Republic of Cuba and the United States of America. We hold these bonds dear, not just as a matter of diplomacy, but because our lives, our histories, and our futures are deeply intertwined. As an independent nation, St. Kitts and Nevis has long been committed to peace and multilateralism. Our foreign policy is guided by respect cooperation, and adherence to the rule of law. Cuba has been an indispensable partner to the Caribbean, and we believe its full integration into hemispheric development initiatives benefits all. A stronger, more prosperous Cuba is in the best interest of the Americas and the Caribbean, enhancing our collective security and sustainability. Equally so, the United States has been an invaluable development partner, and we are grateful for their contributions to our federation over the years. We are committed to strengthening our relationship. Many of us in St. Kitts and Nevis and across the Caribbean have benefited immensely from the opportunities provided by Cuba. I, like so many of my fellow citizens, had the privilege of receiving a first-class education in Cuba. Additionally, I had the opportunity to pursue specialization studies in the United States of America. This unique background highlights the importance of our relationship with both countries and is an example of the importance of that relationship to our socio-economic and political development. Our history proves that these two nations, despite their differences, can coexist in a way that benefits the people of this region. Since 2003, St. Kitts and Nevis has welcomed Cuban professionals who have come not as outsiders, but as family, helping us build a stronger, healthier, and more resilient nation. Our Cuban healthcare professionals have saved lives. Our Cuban-trained professionals have become pillars of society. Let there be no doubt. Cuban professionals in St. Kitts and Nevis are treated with dignity, fairness, and respect. They are provided with comfortable housing at the expense of the government. They receive compensation commensurate with the well-established and statutorily approved government pay scale for professionals with similar expertise. They retain their passports, are free to travel, have vacation leave, work standard hours, and enjoy working conditions equivalent to those of local professionals. Let me be unequivocal. St. Kitts and Nevis values its relationships with both Cuba and the United States. We are a friend to all, an enemy to none. We are and will remain a staunch advocate for the rule of law, human rights, and labor rights. Any accusations of exploitative labor practices in our federation are inconsistent with our laws and values. As a people whose ancestors suffered for over 300 years through forced labor and human trafficking, we have never and will never tolerate human trafficking practices on our shores or anywhere. For this matter specifically, we have to assess the deeper truth. Division between Cuba and the United States of America does not serve the interests of our region. It does not help our people, our economies, or our shared vision for a more stable and prosperous region. It is time for dialogue. I call upon the leadership of Cuba, the United States of America, and CARICOM to come together in a spirit of mutual respect. The challenges we face, economic stability, healthcare, security, are challenges we must face together. Isolation and confrontation will only serve to deepen our struggles. Cooperation, on the other hand, will uplift us all. Until then, St. Kitts and Nevis as a sovereign nation will always make decisions that align with the best interests of our people. Our policies are shaped by our principles, our commitment to justice, and our unwavering dedication to upholding our national sovereignty. Our decisions are guided by fairness, regional solidarity, and the imperative of sustainable development. Under my leadership, St. Kitts and Nevis will continue to engage both Cuba and the United States of America. We take pride in our values, cherish our partnerships, and remain firm in our independence. We remain committed to constructive diplomacy and fostering relationships that uplift our people and advance stability in the region. Our voice on the global stage will continue to reflect both our principles and our pragmatic dedication to progress for all.
had it. That was Prime Minister Dr. Terence Roos speaking there on the issue of the visa, the position taken by the United States, describing countries who utilize the services of the Cuban Medical Brigade as being those facilitating human trafficking, which caught many of the prime ministers in the region off guard because, as it's speechless to see that it's now being classified as human trafficking, which is very interesting because this is a situation that has been going on for quite some time. Countries have benefited significantly by having those medical professionals within their jurisdiction, as well as being provided with medical scholarships. Well, I would say probably all Caribbean countries, territories rather, would have benefited significantly by sending students over there to be trained in medicine. And I'm told, and I've been told, that Cuba has one of the best medical facilities, well, not facilities, not just facility, but the best expertise in terms of medical care compared with the U.S. and some other places, generally and across the board. So this is now coming as a surprise to many. But I think what people wanted in St. Kitts and Nevis, and those who have been calling for the Prime Minister to address this situation, people wanted to hear from the Prime Minister, and I know people will criticize. You can call in, share your thoughts on this and any other issues. But I think what people wanted to hear is the position stated and articulated by Prime Ministers Mia Mottley and Dr. Keith Rowley, as well as St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, in terms of the visa issue. But like I've said, and you've heard Dr. Douglas also address this, the matter is being discussed. Dr. Douglas did say that he was going to meet with representatives of the U.S. Administration on the sidelines of the just concluded OAS meeting, 56 meeting of the General Assembly, where, this discussion would have come up. He's not give an address yet to say what sort of discussions were had, but I know they're meeting on Monday, so we'll likely get a little soundbite from him regarding that discussion, because they have a joint cabinet meeting with Nevis on Monday, and that is something that we would definitely pose to him as well as the Prime Minister. So, it's very interesting that this is a perspective taken. But I wanted to play this report that I did earlier this week, where we heard from Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley, as well as Dr. Keith Rowley. St. Kitts and Nevis, along with other Caribbean territories, find themselves in a difficult position following a statement by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. However, regional leaders are pushing back. Dr. Patricia Bartlett of the Nevis Reformation Party is calling on political leaders to maintain their relationship with Cuba.
I've been public about the way I feel about it. I think that if it is that the sanctions gonna come because we don't comply, then I'm thinking that we should prepare ourselves for the sanctions. We can't afford, to break the alliance that we have with Cuba just on a whim because USA wants to get at Cuba. We have benefited.
Residents of St. Kitts and Nevis have long benefited from this relationship, particularly through access to Cuban medical specialists currently working in the Federation. Additionally, Cuba has provided scholarship opportunities for students across St. Kitts and Nevis and the wider Caribbean to study medicine.
As a matter of fact, we stand to lose much in Nevis because right now we have 12 Cuban nationals who are rendering medical services as specialists on Nevis. If we were to lose them, I don't know who would fill that void. I don't think the US is minded to do that. So I see no win for us. I mean, if it is individuals would have to take the sacrifice, and I think our leaders should step up to the plate. As a matter of fact, I just reposted something that I saw from Mia Mottley, a statement that she would have made that she herself is willing to relinquish her visa. Just on a matter of principle. For her, it's a matter of principle. For us, it's a matter of survival, because I can't see us we are doing already poorly as it relates to our healthcare system, and I can't see us doing any better if the Cubans were to be withdrawn at this point.
In a statement published by the U.S. State Department on February 25th, Rubio announced an expansion of existing Cuba-related visa restrictions. He stated in part, quote, "We announced the expansion of an existing Cuba-related visa restriction policy that target forced labor linked to the Cuban labor export program. This expanded policy applies to current or former Cuban government officials and other individuals, including foreign government officials, who are believed to be responsible for or involved in the Cuban labor export program, particularly Cuba's overseas medical missions. This policy also applies to the immediate family of such persons."
Things that they have done before and things that are in the pipeline are destined to disrupt everything of the way of us. And we ought to be concerned. And so I don't see us, because I think our Caribbean leaders were very reactive. I don't see them, and I'm hoping that they have something, planned for a comprehensive look at what the fallout could be from this disruptive administration that we have up north. You can't be just reacting every time something comes out, because you should be anticipating that things are not going to be smooth for this Trump term. And already we are seeing, I think yesterday I saw something that came out, an article that came out, that the tropical is already indicating that because of the sanctions that they want to impose on China, that any vessel that was made in China, any boat that was made in China, mind you, and transport, goods and services, well, goods for us, from the US to here, they're going to be imposing $1 million on each cargo. That is just ridiculous. And so that is going to impact us in a big way. And so Caribbean leaders have to get together and start planning what they're going to do, have an alternative plan, because right now we're being attacked from all angles, not just health, but the economy is going to be disrupted, at least I think. And so I think they need to sit down and have a comprehensive, discussion as to the way forward.
The Secretary of State argues that the Cuban people are not fairly benefiting from the country's forced labor exports. Meanwhile, CARICOM chair and Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, has taken a strong stance, declaring that she is prepared to relinquish her U.S. visa.
Barbados does not currently have Cuban medical staff or Cuban nurses, but I will be the first to go to the line and to tell you that we could not get through the pandemic without the Cuban nurses. I will also be the first to tell you that we paid them the same thing that we pay Bajans, and that the notion, as was peddled not just by this government in the US, but the previous government, that we were involved in human trafficking by engaging with the Cuban nurses, was fully repudiated and rejected by us. Now, I don't believe that we have to shout across the seas, but I am prepared, like others in this region, that if we cannot reach a sensible agreement on this matter, then if the cost of it is the loss of my visa to the US, then so be it. But what matters to us is principles. And I have said over and over that principles only mean something when it is inconvenient to stand by it.
Trinidad and Tobago's outgoing Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, also addressed the issue during a recent event in his country.
We rely a lot for our healthcare delivery on certain specialists who over the decades we have obtained from India, from the Philippines, sometimes from Africa, and mainly from Cuba. Out of the blue now we are being called human traffickers because we hire technical people who we pay top dollar equal to local rates, but we are now being accused of taking part in a program where people are being exploited. That's somebody's interpretation. And of course, there are local people here encouraging them to take away our US visas. Today, I just came back from California. And if I never there again in my life, I will ensure that the sovereignty of Trinidad and Tobago is known to its people and respected by all.
Additionally, St. Kitts and Nevis' Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Denzel Douglas, recently told the media that he plans to discuss the matter with U.S. officials on the sidelines of the just concluded 56th General Assembly of the Organization of American States.
This is a matter that we have taken very, very seriously as a government and also as a region. In fact, just last week, Friday, we met as a group, all foreign ministers in the Caribbean community. We met virtually to look at the implications of this particular matter.
It remains unclear whether the Donald Trump administration in Washington, D.C. will seek to reverse this policy. Yes, there you had it. That was a little bit of, you heard a little bit there from both Mia Montley and Trinidad and Tobago's outgoing Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley. They've articulated their positions that they're willing to give up their U.S. visas in order to maintain the status quo in terms of the relationship with the Cubans and the Cuba Brigade. Like I've said, and everybody knows, the Caribbean region has a long-standing relationship with Cuba, and where do we go from here in terms of medical expertise and so forth? I have some American friends who did indicate to me that they don't understand the position in terms of visa revocations because of the relationships with Cuba. They understood that the U.S. has a problem with Cuba, and much of that they believe has not changed the Cuban position. But why is it that they're expressing a long arm to the Caribbean region, who are only benefiting significantly in the area of health expertise from the Cubans? So, yes, we'll continue with more Inside the News. This is one of the topics that we will be focused on this morning. We'll be joined by Nevis Reformation Party's Patricia Bartlett at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock. She's joining us for the second half of the program, where we will discuss local and national issues, touching a little bit on regional and geopolitics in terms of its impact on us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But we'll take a break now, and then we'll come right back and continue with more Inside the News here on WinFM.
Different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Let TDC Financial Services help you go for your goals. Whether you're thinking of taking that grand vacation, down payment on a house, higher education, TDC Financial Services has various plans that will allow you to go for your goals. Choose from the Accumulator Plus, Investment Starter Plan, and Fixed Deposit. Ready to go for your goals? Visit us at TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
And we are back here on Inside the News. Yes, I'm German Abel sitting in today, and we're taking a look in the first half of the program in terms of what's making the news and some of the big issues that have made the news this week in terms of national interest. And since the start of the year, I must say this, since the start of the year, we, well, at least I and, some of the people who helped produce the program, we have been taking a look at a lot of geopolitics and issues that have made the news. And it's to an extent, we've done it on this program, yes. And in some sections of the media have also been reporting on this. And this is prior to Trump taking office. And people keep asking us, why do we cover certain stories? That's because, again, and you keep hearing me say this, and it's become so cliched now, that, St. Kitts does not live in a vacuum. Right. A lot of what we do, we depend on the international community for support and assistance. St. Kitts and Nevis, it's just small, right? 2 small islands, comprising just over 50,000, probably 60,000, 70,000 people right now. Health officials have been saying, hey, the birth rates are declining. That's a concern. The Social Security Administration has also raised that issue. A lot of people come into St. Kitts. We import a lot of food supply from the United States. We depend on Cuba for our health, for assistance in the area of health and health expertise. We depend on the United States for certain levels of assistance, whether or not it's crime fighting. The LAMAT group, they're also going to be in St. Kitts and Nevis. And if you can remember, that's the Southern Command, the officials in terms of medical expertise will be in St. Kitts and Nevis for probably just another week or so, probably later this month or early next month. I don't have the date correct. But what this has highlighted is that St. Kitts and Nevis is dependent on foreign assistance. We saw what the current administration in the United States has done, taken a U.S. first approach. So they've basically gutted and shelved a number of programs under the U.S. aid, which benefits developing countries, some in Africa, some in the Caribbean. Even us in the media will be impacted because some of our training programs also come under the U.S. aid and so forth. So we've been urging people, keep abreast with what is happening across the globe. The tit-for-tat trade war between China, Canada, Mexico, and the United States, that is going to have a bottom line issue on us here in St. Kitts and Nevis because, again, we are dependent on supplies coming out of these countries. Even though we export stuff, we are heavily import dependent country as well. That's why the government has been pushing for quite some time for the 25 by 25 initiative. So the bottom line here is, we have to keep abreast and realize that everything will impact us. These major decisions will impact us somehow and in some way, shape, or form, even in our pockets. So that's why we try to keep you abreast in the media in terms of what is happening, why it's happening, and how it's going to impact everybody in St. Kitts and Nevis. Some of you may not necessarily like the reports that we do, but it's part of us keeping you informed of what is going on internationally. So yes, one other thing that struck me was when at the recently concluded CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, Guyana's president, Dr. Irfan Ali, who is actually CARICOM lead in agriculture and food in the region, spoke on the issue of the food. And when he talked about food, he referenced egg prices in the United States and how that is impacting us here in St. Kitts, well, not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, but across the region, right? And we know what's happening in the United States when it comes to egg prices and the whole bird flu issue over there. But let's continue the discussion. The phone lines are open. You can call in, share your thoughts as we discuss these and other issues impacting us in St. Kitts and Nevis. The phone lines are 4660989, 6620989, and 7620989. You can call in, share your thoughts, and let's have a cordial discussion in terms of the impacts and solutions that we can best, how we can best deal with these issues, specifically the potential visa restrictions. We heard the Prime Minister last evening touch on the Cuban matter. So, yes, now we'll hear from Dr. Denzel Douglas in his remarks at the OAS meeting that was held where Surinam's diplomat. But before we do that, let's go to the phone lines and hear from this caller. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator. Thank you for allowing me. I am going to chime right in on the issue with the American rhetoric towards any region of the world, especially if whatever the region is benefiting from. No, America enemy doesn't have to be our enemy. And I'm talking about St. Kitts and Nevis. Okay? And it's ungrateful for that attitude, that behavior. And I condemn it because America has developed relationship with Russia. Is it a fake or phony? Cuba has a relationship with Russia. Now, why wouldn't it be hard on Russia and then also Cuba? Why is it soft on Russia and so hard on Cuba? Cuba has not done anything.
Hold on.
Yes.
Let me just chime in though. I'm being all in and being fair. I know you're asking a rhetorical question, right? But the United States has been no. I'm just saying the United States has been hard on both Cuba and Russia, because I think right now there's certain sanctions on Russia. But make your point though.
America is unpredictable, especially this president. And let me just make this clear. Americans has no issue. Trump has an issue. Trump and his minions. Okay? Trump and his minions has issue. And remember first, when they were campaigning for Americans to put them in office, all these was on the table. The strongest that was on the table was the border of Mexico and Canada of those illegal immigrants. But to tell you the truth, no one is illegal. God gave us a chance to born wherever, and I support that. But you see this man-made dictatorship, self-construct, self-aggrandization, those are abomination. But I'm going to tell you, the next thing, they are with what they have put into place right now, okay, and it has to be into, because it will be stopped very soon. Trump is not God. He's a man. But if he's trying to be a God, let him continue. But the next restriction he's going to put, okay, we support our people. Every island residents support their friends and family. Western Union, MoneyGram, REA. That's the next thing he's going to touch. If we send money out to our people, that's going to be another gag, another restriction. And I'm telling you, Caribbean leaders have to unite, and Caribbean leaders have to embrace and the sustainable ability on their lands. Because see now, the supplies that we depend on importing, it has now come to a hard and might be abrupt stop. So guess where do we stand? Where we are and where we are going to go. We got to embrace on what we have, take what you can take and make use of it immediately. No time to if, when, and how. Let us take our initiative now, okay? And stand firm, okay? Trump will soon be gone. So, my friend and my people, I hope our leaders can be supportive of both because we need America and we need Cuba. We know what we are benefiting from Cuba. Would America give us what they are telling us to stop? That's hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is worse than witchcraft, whichever one comes first. Ungratefulness. So I arrest my case there, but all Caribbean leaders has to bond together and sing in one harmonious chorus or verse.
Okay, Carla, before you go, I want to ask you this question. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier that Trump campaigned on the border and probably lowering food prices and so forth, but he also campaigned on putting America first, right? Quickly, and he won, more than 50% of the votes, which is an indication to me that people agreed with the policies and the hardline policies that he had campaigned on in terms of putting America first. And this, and when I say America, America's interest as well, putting that first. But, and this includes, when I say putting America first, this includes certain approaches in terms of dealing with, quote unquote, the geopolitics of the international community, if it means ruffling some feathers. So how do you respond to something like that? Just quickly, because I have another call.
We cannot be selfish, okay? And ruffling feathers, I have a problem in ruffling feathers, where there is wrong. But how are you going to ruffle other people's feathers? America itself, their feathers to be ruffled from within. Because here we are. Okay, let me just take a pen there. Yes, America campaigned. Trump campaigned on certain things, right? But he had more after he got elected. And Trump has disappointed majority of those who put him in power because look what he do. He's firing people who vote for him. Some family, some friends, some person who was sustainable to their family. And it upset the whole of America. And that is unacceptable. So he is a self-destruct. How shall I say? Idiot.
Okay. That's too strong of a word for us on the radio. But go ahead.
Well, I remember playing speaker and I give Jackie. That's my contribution. Mm-hmm. Because he's acting like an idiot and a damn fool.
Okay. I understand the emotions, but
I'm not going to change my brother. I said it, and I'm a plain speaker, and I will.
Go ahead. All right, thanks, caller. Well, again, we may not necessarily agree, and I've always said this: we may not necessarily agree with what or take a policy position by political parties, but we still have to respect the office of what, or the office that the person represents. Caller, good morning.
Yes, good morning, man. How you doing today, man?
I'm well.
The line is free. The other caller's gone?
Yes. We just have about 8 minutes before we connect with NRP, so go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Quickly, man. This issue here with the threat coming down from the State Department in the U.S. to try to, restrict these visas on our leaders. Not a good thing coming from the United States. From when the United States care about Cuba.
But Carla, hold on. I think this is what a lot of people are missing, and Prime Minister Motley alluded to it in her statement. All administrations have taken this approach. The Biden administration apparently took the same approach, took the same side, but they did not go as far as.
It's nothing new from the United States.
Exactly.
There's nothing new.
But what this administration has done, they went a step further to rope in these leaders.
Restrict our leaders'
exactly.
Business, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I got that. I got
go
that
ahead.
loud and clear. Trust me. But What I'm saying now is that locally in the Federation, our Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and our ambassadors should come to the public and have a press brief on this issue. I don't think they. I stand corrected, but I don't think the Prime Minister has said anything about it yet.
Well,
we
okay.
gotta be-
Hold on, caller. Let's back up there quickly, because first things first. Where you left off, the Prime Minister gave an address last evening, and I played that earlier, right?
Okay.
Right.
Okay. That's
The second part of that,
like I said.
yes, the second part of it is Dr. Douglas responded to the question at the Prime Minister's press conference earlier this month, right? And what he said is that they're going to take this particular matter up because he attended the 56th OAS General Assembly last week or early this week, sometime. My dates are off. But what he said is that he's going to discuss this particular matter with U.S. representatives who were there, because they're part of the Trump administration. He did say that it is an alarming issue, and these are my words, it's an alarming issue and it's a matter of concern, right? And everybody and all governments in the region are saying the same thing. And this is what I'm concluding from this, is that the government is taking a diplomatic approach before they come to say, okay, we've made success or we have not made success in discussing this issue. That's my takeaway from what is being said. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me rewind again. Based off of you said the Prime Minister make a statement last night.
Yes.
Based off of that, and based off of what you said about the Foreign Minister said, a definitive statement, an approach, like a definitive approach hasn't been made yet.
You're asking me a question?
They're working behind the scenes, per se.
Basically, because what Dr. Douglas also indicated is that previously, I think it was last week, the weekend before the press conference, the foreign ministers of the region met and they discussed a particular issue. But what the issue is, and this is what I've been gathering, the issue is people want to hear the Prime Minister come out and say, hey, I am willing to give up my U.S. visa. I think that's the bottom line issue.
Yes,
people want to
agree
hear.
With you. I agree with you on that. We're eager to hear from him, really. You know what I mean? And the eagerness is we just want to see which part of the equation he's coming out on. But undoubtedly, the citizens in the region, most of the callers that have been calling in, we are asking for our leaders to stand up to the USA. Don't be bullied. Stand up. This is a grand chance for the leaders in the Caribbean to come together, speak as one voice, and stand up to the United States. We cannot tolerate this stuff all the time from the USA, you know, and for our leaders to get their visas restricted, that's an alarming situation, very alarming. What is the U.S. saying? They don't want our leaders to come to the UN? When they're traveling to the United States, they're coming in under clearance, right, with those visas and their diplomatic passports, right?
Yes.
Are they threatening to cancel all that?
That's again. So, okay. So make your point, because I have to. We're about to connect with Nevis.
So my point is, we just need our leaders to stand up, stand firm, and speak as one voice for the people of the Caribbean region. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, thanks, caller. Well, yes. So I just wanted to reiterate the statement that was made, because I played the story where we heard from both Mayor Motley and Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister, right? So what we have seen and what we've heard. So let me read what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States, said specifically when it comes to the issue with the Cubans. And this is a press statement from the U.S. State Department. Expansion of visa restriction policies for individuals exploiting Cuban labor. Today, we announced expansion, and today meaning February 25th, we announced the expansion of an existing Cuban-related visa restriction policy that targets forced labor linked to the Cuban labor export program. This expanded policy applies to current or former Cuban government officials and other individuals, including foreign government officials, who are believed to be responsible for or are involved in the Cuban labor export program, particularly Cuba's overseas medical missions. This policy also applies to the individual family of such persons. The department has already taken steps to impose visa restrictions on several individuals, including Venezuelans, under this expanded policy. Cuba continues to profit from the forced labor of its workers, and the regime's abusive and coercive labor practices are well documented. Cuba's labor export programs, which include medical missions, enrich the Cuban regime, and in the case of Cuba's overseas medical missions, deprive ordinary Cubans of the medical care they desperately need in their home country. The United States is committed to countering forced labor practices around the globe. To do so, we must promote accountability, not just for Cuban officials responsible for these policies, but also those complicit in the exploitation and forced labor of Cuban workers. Yes, that was a statement issued by the U.S. State Department on February 25th, which spoke to that particular concern that, Cuban labor, especially the medical brigade, is being exploited. Well, we'll take a quick break now, and then we'll come right back and continue with more Inside the News here on Win FM.
Found the sound, 98.9 Win FM.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
More than 42 million cars from 19 different car companies are being recalled for faulty airbag inflators. Repairs are fast, easy, and free. The problem isn't with the airbag, it's with the airbag inflator. Because the inflator can rupture, shooting shrapnel through the airbag, which can cause serious injury or even death. Don't risk it, fix it.
Please contact TDC Automotive Division to find out if your Toyota vehicle is affected by the Takata airbag recall. Visit or call us at 465-2511 in St. Kitts or 469-5430 in Nevis.
People make the world go.
Yes, and we are back here on Inside the News. So, yes, we'll be joined momentarily by Dr. Patricia Bartlett of the Nevis Reformation Party. So we're going to talk a little bit of Nevis news as well as, what's happening in the Federation, get her thoughts on that as well. So, yes, we have been talking about the visa, the Cubans, as well as the potential for the quote unquote, according to the report, that we're still working to get details on, the list that St. Kitts and Nevis has found itself on. So, yes, you can call in, share your thoughts on these and other stories that you believe will impact us. Like I said, we go beyond the headlines here on Inside the News because talking politics will not get us anywhere. We will just keep blaming each other, and we will not necessarily be solving the problems impacting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So, so you can call and share your thoughts in the meanwhile. But right now, we will hear a little bit from Dr. Douglas regarding the issue of the OAS. Yes, he spoke at the OAS, so we will join him now. The Caribbean Community, CARICOM, is celebrating. Sorry, that's the wrong one that we're playing there. Oh, yes. I think that's the one that we have there. Well, sorry, we will play we'll play the ambassador first. She weighed in on the issue of women's rights and reaffirmed St. Kitts and Nevis's position regarding women's rights and what St. Kitts and Nevis has been doing to push gender equality in the Federation. The Caribbean Community, CARICOM, is celebrating the appointment of Albert Ramdin as the new Secretary General of the Organization of American States. St. Kitts and Nevis used the platform of the 56th General Assembly to call for necessary reforms within the organization. In his address on Monday afternoon, Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Denzel Douglas congratulated Ramdin, a diplomat from Suriname, on becoming the first Caribbean national to hold a distinguished position.
Your ascension to this eminent position, Minister Ramdin, it comes at a pivotal crossroad in the history of our hemisphere, demanding bold leadership, unwavering determination, and a very clear vision to navigate the converging crises that challenge our own collective prosperity and stability.
With Ramdin set to assume office later this month, Dr. Douglas underscored the significance of this leadership transition.
For decades, the OAS has been a steadfast guardian of democracy, guardian of human rights, multidimensional security, and integral development throughout the Americas.
Dr. Douglas emphasized that Ramdin's leadership must be guided by a strong mandate to reinvigorate the OAS's mission, enhance its impact, and ensure that it remains a beacon of hope, prosperity, and unity for all member states.
But with shifting political realities, the organization must evolve to maintain in its relevance and capacity to drive transformative progress by becoming more agile and adaptable, leveraging its political influence to tackle emerging challenges while promoting inclusive and meaningful engagement.
While the OAS has played a critical role in the hemisphere, the Washington-based body has faced criticism over the years for its stance on certain issues. Dr. Douglas urged the organization to evolve in response to shifting political realities. Ramdin assumes leadership at a time when small island states in the region are grappling with existential threats. Dr. Douglas highlighted these challenges in his remarks.
Mr. Chair, the challenges before us, they are complex and multifaceted. From climate change and security threats to social inequality and economic instability. Addressing these issues demands collective solutions and greater cooperation among member states. We therefore look to our new leadership to drive a results-oriented agenda, one that delivers tangible solutions and fosters lasting change. St. Kitts and Nevis stands committed to working towards advancing a more integrated and prosperous hemisphere. As we strive to become a sustainable island state, our priorities must remain clear. Advocating.
And we are back. You were listening to a little bit of Dr. Denzel Douglas at the OAS there. Because we are now joined by Dr. Patricia Bartlett of the Nevis Reformation Party. Dr. Bartlett, good morning, and thanks for joining us this morning. Yeah, you're muted, Dr. Bartlett. Well, as you know, technology sometimes. Oh, yes, Dr. Bartlett.
And yes, safeguard the future.
Yes, 1 second. Yes, Dr. Bartlett, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Saturday. I know we had some background challenges, but thank you for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Let's first start off. I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to review, because I just want to start off with this, because this is the big talking point in St. Kitts and Nevis at the moment. And I want to get your thoughts on this. St. Kitts and Nevis has been put on a list. We've not verified the list, but the international media has reported that St. Kitts is on a quote-unquote list of countries that could either face ban or visa restrictions. I just want to get your thoughts on surrounding this whole discussion of Donald Trump, visa restrictions. He's sending, asking small island states in the Caribbean region to accept third-party deportees. Just to get your thoughts on that as we start the discussion.
Well, we are probably not in a position really to honor all of the requests that would be made of us, just by virtue of our small size and our economic challenges that we've been facing within recent times. I don't know if the request for us to accommodate others, because we can hardly accommodate ourselves with our infrastructure as it relates to health, education, and the list. So I don't know if any help or monetary help would be extended that would sweeten the pot, so to speak, because we have been complaining, Dr. June, as well as my premier over here, have been complaining that we don't have enough people. And so they're thinking about increasing the critical mass. So I don't know if it comes with a dollar amount, but we have to be very careful, because we can't afford to have an infusion of people, or an influx of people rather, and not have the wherewithal to really be able to make sure that everybody is comfortable and have access to the basic necessities. And so I don't think that we're necessarily going to be high on the list of people who would be takers on that, because I think it would be foolhardy for us to do that at this point in time, because we're not even yet in a position to accommodate free movement within the OECS, let alone CARICOM or the wider world. So I would be a bit concerned if we were to jump at something like that.
Do you see this decision that, again, the U.S. government has not mentioned it, but this report that we've seen from the New York Times last evening, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to review it, but it basically says St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia are on the yellow part of the list, which has 3 tiers, and the yellow is at the bottom, could possibly face visa restrictions. Do you believe that this is as a result of, well, first up, are you concerned that our name is being mentioned on this list? And do you believe that this is probably the repercussions of St. Kitts and Nevis probably, standing up to the U.S.?
I think that is a lot of, assumption. I don't want to get to that level. I don't know why is it we would have been placed on this yellow list. All I do know is that we are on always on somehow we always seem to find ourselves on the blacklist. And so as it is now and the atmosphere in the US, I don't think it really favors people who are of our skin hue. And so we have to be careful about that. Sometimes I think that we misinterpret sometimes things that are going on around us because we're not well in tune to the wider worldview of some people. But the yellow list, I don't know that at this stage we ought to be alarmed at it. I think we should have seen it coming. The foundation was laid for it. We knew what happened in the first term, and we, at least most of us who were paying attention, would have anticipated that we would be somehow getting to this point where we are now. And so I think we probably are illy prepared to deal with it. We've not had a regional strategy, and that is the most alarming thing for me, or the most disappointing thing for me, in that our leaders within CARICOM, we have not developed a strategy so that we can weather the storm. And we should have seen it coming. The forecast was there. And so for us not to be prepared, I am totally disappointed, but I'm hoping that we still have time to salvage. I mean, it's about time. It seems like the world order is changing. We might have to start looking at other people to befriend, other than our traditional friends.
Well, and like that, let's shift quickly to local politics before we jump back to the geopolitical environment internationally. Um, how do you view? What's your view of the current situation in Nevis? We're seeing the hospital challenges. We're seeing the Mondo track challenges. What's your position on that?
My position, and it's not a secret, I've challenged this government, a government that I would have supported at one point, mind you, just because they've not been living up to the expectations and the promises that they've made to the people of Nevis. And they seem not to have a full throat approach to dealing with the issues. It's like a little thing here and a little thing there, this haphazard approach, and no meaningful planning. And that is what I think is keeping back Nevis. There's no serious concerted effort to drive issues that really would make the lives of the ordinary man on Nevis more comfortable. The people at the top, they're doing okay. Because for all of the challenges that you have just outlined, briefly, the few, the those people who are in the political elite, they have access to healthcare. They can go overseas, and so the hospital not being complete is not an issue for them.
And and now, because I'm getting the picture that even though St. Kitts and Nevis to some extent is doing really well, um, on the flip side to that, to an extent, Nevis is being challenged, but there's also this discussion that Nevis is also doing well, and some acknowledgement must be made to the fact that Nevis is also doing well. Um, do you agree with that notion, that idea that there's a balancing act where that basically both balance out each other, and residents on Nevis are actually better off?
Well, I don't know whose report you have been paying attention to as it relates to how Nevis is doing and what metrics are being followed here, what are being measured. Because if you were to listen to the premier, he makes it seem like Nevis is doing well, but doing well for whom? How many people on Nevis are doing well? We have a poverty rate in Nevis, I think, that could challenge Haiti at this point in time. But I don't know, like I said, where you're getting your data from to suggest that Nevis is doing well. We're still predominantly dependent on tourism as our main source of income over here. And that you must admit is something that is seasonal. So for a couple of months of the year, for 6 months of the year, we gather nuts, and for the other 6 months, we have been spending the same nuts, and we are not advancing. The truth is, Nevis is not doing as well as St. Kitts. It has never really been, done as well as St. Kitts, for quite a while now. With your access to the CBI, and we don't have equal access, obviously, to the CBI, and we have all been dependent on the CBI. We have been complaining we're not getting our fair share, but there's no one who really has been pursuing that issue on our behalf in a genuine way for us to get an equitable share of what has been, available in in the federation to sustain St. Kitts and Nevis. So I don't know, like I said, and I'm not challenging you on it as it relates to your data source, but Nevis is not doing well. The ordinary man on Nevis would tell you that Nevis is not doing well. When you're going to Charleston on a Friday afternoon, what is happening there does not suggest to anybody with a reasonable sense of understanding that Nevis is doing well.
So, and so are you saying then that the reality on the ground is completely different from the data set that is being published, whether or not it be by the Nevis Island Administration or the international agencies? Because, for example, we saw the broad brush report from the IMF that said, St. Kitts and Nevis's economy is expected to grow probably by 2% this year, but in real terms, it might be at 1% or 0.5% compared to last year. So the reality on the ground is completely different from what these agencies and governments might be publishing.
Well, I don't know that the IMF report is suggesting that Nevis is doing well, not even St. Kitts, because 2% is below what, I mean, 2% growth is not anything that is significant. We ought to be doing 4% or above in order for us to feel comfortable. We compare our performance now to performance during unity time. Mind you, I'm not saying it is a function of the government. I'm just saying the period of time. And we are not doing well. And so, I mean, you have big license and kids singing a whole calypso. Things are not going well. I mean, and that is what is being reflected in Nevis. Data set, trust me, the IMF report does not suggest that Nevis is doing well. I have not yet seen all of the data, but based on what we are seeing, it is not suggesting that Nevis is doing well. Based on what they have published in the statement, it does not suggest that Nevis, not even St. Kitts, is doing well.
I want to get from you.
Data on Nevis, I don't know what data set you're seeing, but I've not seen any reliable data coming out of Nevis. I mean, you can't get basic data, not even on the basket of goods that, basic. I can't see any data coming out of Nevis.
Okay, when we talk about the development on Nevis, I know the focus, and you alluded to it a little while ago. Tourism is a critical one of the critical pillars of the economy on the island. I know there's a joint cabinet discussion on Monday in St. Kitts. Where do you believe the Nevis economy is falling short that the government should be paying more attention to? Because even in St. Kitts, tourism is the big quote unquote bread and butter industry on the island. But now that we're seeing these geopolitical challenges, and one of the largest markets for our tourism is the United States, and with the position now taken by Donald Trump, there is a concern that tourism could be hit. What other avenues do you believe that more attention should be placed on to further enhance the economy?
Well, before we get to the other avenues, let us just focus on tourism. We have not been able to grow tourism on Nevis. We are talking about on Nevis, cruise tourism is not anything that is significant over here, but as it relates to stayover visitors, we have lost beds. So the thing is, instead of us expanding tourism on Nevis has been contracting. And even though that is our major source of income, one would think that you'd pay more attention to that. But the premier has said that he has not been able to. So we'd like to just sum it up and say he has been incompetent. But he has been saying that he has not been able to attract foreign direct investment, not only in tourism, but in any other area in Nevis. Everything is on a go slow, or everything is reversing course on Nevis. So I don't see any industry that is flourishing, so to speak, to take the place of tourism, the seasonality of tourism, taking that into consideration. After June, everything is shut down. So Nevis is not doing well. We need to be able to increase our activity in the housing market. Nothing much is going on over here. A little house here, there, somebody tacking up something there, here or there, but nothing impressive. We have not been able to have any major investment on Nevis within the past 5 years to merely move the needle in housing. And so we are getting requests from people who are maybe masons, or those guys are involved in the construction industry, who just want to, could I get a little job just to cut some grass? That is the level that we are going at right now. People are just trying to make ends meet. So there's nothing significant going on the island. So you see this propaganda. I mean, that is where the premier has been spending his time, just generating propaganda rather than doing the work of attracting foreign direct investment, or even to get locals to invest in anything meaningful on the island. I'm not hearing you.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. As you mentioned that, right, and you're saying that some of the industries are struggling, or some of the sectors are struggling. Um, let us look at the CBI. Do you believe that if Nevis has its quote unquote here fair share, that some of that investment could be channeled into various subsectors of the economy to maybe spur some economic activity?
Well, of course, getting extra money would always be good, but what have we done with what we have received up to this point? That is what the challenge is. We have not had a responsible or fiscally responsible administration on Nevis for the past 7 years. And that is what the crux of the matter is. The monies that they got. You're talking about seed money. When you get your seed, these guys have been eating the seeds. They have not been planting the seeds. And so they eat the whole thing. So there's nothing to harvest at the end of the day, because you're growing corn. When you get your bumper crop, you save some of the seeds so that you can plant. You don't eat all, and that is what they've been doing. So they've consumed all of the seeds, and so they've not really invested anything into the economy to keep it going. And so that is why on Nevis you see things just start and they can't complete them, and so you can't get on to the next level. So we always we're like we're on a treadmill. We're not going anywhere. We're just moving, but we're not going anywhere. And that has been the challenge on Nevis, in that we've had a fiscally irresponsible administration in the form of the CCM led administration in the NIA, which is unfortunate for the people of Nevis, because we have seen money come, but what has happened to the money? That is what the issue has been. Nothing meaningful that has happened, because there's not been any plan. And that is why they're failing us in a big way, because they have not planned effectively to deliver the goods.
There's been some discussions surrounding the shortfall, or the potential shortfall in the budget, based on the fact that we have this VAT reduction, or probably removal of VAT for the for 6 months of the year or thereabout. Um, should the administration have catered for something like this? One, or should further discussions be had in terms of what your budget is going to look like for the island of Nevis with the federal government? Because there seemingly was some disconnect between St. Kitts and Nevis, because Nevis passed its budget first, and then St. Kitts passed its budget after, and then this is now impacting the island of Nevis.
Well, if you look at the figures, I don't think it is really significant. When you look at the figures, I don't think it's significant in the first instance. But to the point that you made about the collaboration between St. Kitts and Nevis, there's always room for improvement. But what one would think, with the two leaders being best buddies, that you would have these kind of conversations, that these things are basic. And for the fact that this is not happening, I don't know why it is not happening, because the premier said he has never had a better body in St. Kitts than Dr. Ju. And Dr. Ju seemed to, think that, for some reason, he cannot, let me not go there.
But but what is the NRP's position? What is the NRP doing in terms of educating the people on Nevis, getting them to understand, I guess, the state of the economy, getting them to understand. I have a caller here. Caller, good morning.
Good morning. Let me turn my volume down.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I got it. Good morning,
Dr.
Madam
Bartlett.
Guest,
Yes.
Dr. Bartlett.
Good morning.
Yes, I was longing to hear from NRP, and thanks be to the goodness for hearing you this morning. Now, I second your motion when you describe what Nevis is. Nothing is going wrong.
Caller? Caller, we're not hearing you.
Oops. Hold on. Let me see why.
We're hearing you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I was a student in St. Kitts at Keyan High School, and I actually moved over to Nevis where I finished school and my education was more enhanced. But the way I left Nevis at that time, Nevis is still the same old, same old. And I'm wondering why. And I think it's based on politics. And the leaders that are presumed to be the elected ones, they don't mean well. And I am a strong advocate against their governance and their greed. Nevis should have been better than where it is. But then, on the other hand, the oppositions, like NRP, I think NRP needs some more oomph in their get-go, move forward. So I will say there are weakness, and I don't know how you all can strengthen and embrace a demeanor and move forward full throttle, because y'all can't let one set of assumed to be elitists to be running Nevis like it's my way and there is no other way. So NRP, I am taking a stand for St. Kitts as an independent, and there are track records saying independence never successful. But I believe if there is a proactive independence, I consider you as an independent, and I consider whether it's St. Kitts or Nevis to have a collaboration, because that's the only way to get rid of these kleptocrats and self-aggrandizationists. But I am coming down, and I come in to see NRP, because there is one inspiration that I know and I grew up with, Carlisle Powell. Okay? And I think from that inspiration I got out from Carlisle, he always in my heart, but I don't know where the weakness is in NRP. NRP, y'all got to step up. Y'all got to be aggressive and bold. And if I could be a part of that, I shall. Not will, I shall. So my encouragement to you, my lady, be strong and get stronger. And practice and get better from where you are, moving forward ever and backward never. My name is Winston Welcome. Carlisle know me as Inches. And that is my encouragement to the NRP. Because we can't be unvisionable and low dynamic, and I don't think I should even say dynamic, thinkers dictate our future and sustainability of the NIA and St. Kitts. I am a crusader against condemnation. Bye for now.
All right, thanks, caller.
You have a question for me?
No.
You have a question for me?
No, caller. All right, thanks. Any response to that caller, Dr. Bartlett?
Well, I welcome the offer that has been made to join us. We can always improve. There's always room for improvement, and there's always a space for accommodation. Whoever would like to join us, our tent is big, and it's open. And so thank him for expressed interest in helping us.
All right, Dr. Bartlett, we'll take a quick break now because I have to acknowledge our partners, and then we'll come back and continue with more of this discussion.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Let TDC Financial Services help you go for your goals. Whether you're thinking of taking that grand vacation, down payment on a house, higher education, TDC Financial Services has various plans that will allow you to go for your goals. Choose from the Accumulator Plus, Investment Starter Plan, and Fixed Deposit. Ready to go for your goals? Visit us at TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
And we are back here on Inside the News. We are joined by Nevis Reformation Party's Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Dr. Bartlett, the callers really want to interact with you because the phone lines were going off during the break, but there are now no callers, but they really want to interact with you. While we await the callers, I want to get your perspective on what NRP has been doing to educate the masses, get the masses to understand specifically what it is, the state of the economy, what they themselves can do, educate them on the simple things of to enrich themselves, enrich their lives, and not necessarily depend heavily on the government.
Well, government has a lot to play in how people are living their lives. The level of uncertainty over here is that most people have, not been spending as they would like to, because, like I said, the economic uncertainty on Nevis is really concerning to most of our citizens over here. We have been interacting. We've been doing house to house. We've been having radio shows. We're on a Monday night. Every Monday night we're on from 8:30 until 10 on 2020. We have a program that is run by Carlisle Powell that was made reference, the person who the caller had referenced earlier. He has a show on Thursday nights, and that runs from 8 to 10. There's Target that Dr. Daly is responsible for producing, and that comes on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And so it's not like Nevis people are not hearing from us, but in St. Kitts, I guess you don't access the same media that we do. And so some people in St. Kitts might think that we're not doing that much, but we've been over here, we've been shouting from the mountaintop, we've been going to the seas, we've been all over. We are in contact with our people, and we are hearing from our people, and we are experiencing the same issues that they are experiencing. So we can relate. And so I am right now in a position where I can tell you who in my constituency are the ones who would need more than the $250 per month in the wallet. There's some people who need more, and I can tell you there's some who probably need less. What we've been seeing is that the social safety net has not been extended in an equitable way over here, and so some people are really experiencing a much harder period of time than others. We are showing the people how is it the government has not been servicing them to the extent that they could. They have the potential to do better, but they have not been doing well by the people.
Dr. Bartlett, I want to ask you a question. You said something there specifically, but I want to take this caller because, caller, can you go ahead and state your question?
Yes, hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, good day to you and the guest, Dr. Bartlett there.
Good day.
This is going straight to Dr. Bartlett. Good day, how are you?
I'm doing well. Go ahead with your question, and then I would answer everything at the end.
Okay, I made a live chat the other day, right? And I made a statement that NRP needs to reshuffle. And then there was an NRP supporter that came right behind and responded to my comment by saying, "I'm saying a lot, but I'm not saying anything." How do you take such a comment from that individual? Where is the maturity and the openness, in people's views and opinions? And reshuffling, reorganization is always a thing in any company, any business.
Okay, I guess we lost that caller there. Um, do you care to respond, Dr. Bartlett?
Well, I'm sorry that we didn't get the context in which he was having this conversation about the research reshuffling, and so I guess when we are able to re-engage him, then we'll be able to get a little more substance on what the point he was trying to make.
Okay,
So until then, I'll reserve my comment.
okay. I want to ask you, and this goes back to the point that you were making that in some of your constituents need more than the 250. What's the relationship between NRP and the current administration?
The current Nevis Island
No,
administration.
the Labor administration.
The relationship, well, we're open to dialogue, and I know that my leader would have been in dialogue with the people on St. Kitts. It seems to me, though, that we would have had and would have enjoyed a closer working relationship at some point in time. And so some of the assumptions that were made on our side as it relates to our reception, you know, some people have been a little more disappointed than others, but we I think we have a good working relationship, at least in spirit. We do. We embrace everybody. I mean, I speak to everybody who invite me to the functions or the events, and I can make it to St. Kitts, I come. And so we're open, that we don't have any animosity against any party on St. Kitts.
Well, I asked that question against the backdrop of you saying that, listen, we have constituents in your particular constituency who are definitely in need of more than the $250. So I guess the question is this information sort of related or relayed rather to the federal government when you guys are having your discussion? That I know this is something that is fairly new, this $250, or well, I guess it can be seen both ways, both at the federal level and also at the local level, whether or not this information is relayed, because you could see somebody who lives in a dilapidated house, the person is definitely in need of more than $250, but they may not necessarily be getting that level of assistance.
Well, it is clear because the same constituents, as a matter of fact, the Premier and I share the same constituents. And so what I am seeing, he ought to be able to see. How he internalizes that, though, the level of empathy that is applied to these situations is what is in question here, because I can assure you that I am more concerned with the welfare of the people in my constituency than the Premier has demonstrated that the level that he has. So when I see the people in my constituency, I'm not necessarily saying that the Bastille is responsible or totally responsible for my constituents, because the Premier, like I said, has that responsibility. So if there's a shortfall, if $250 is now extended to somebody in my constituency who would have been receiving $500 at some point in time, the Premier should recognize that. He should have information as granular as that he can address the shortfall and be able to offer the difference. So if someone here needs an extra $250 because they used to get $500, then he should have a program to supplement what they're getting. And that is not happening. I can only talk about it. I can offer the little resources that I have, but you do understand when you're not in government, you don't have access to the resources to help people. Even though I would really like to extend a hand to everybody, because in St. John's, Nevis, this is the poorest constituency probably in the whole federation, as it relates to the level of poverty. And that is something that we have to pay attention to. That is something that we have to address.
Dr. Barrett, we have just about 15 minutes left for the program. And I want to ask you this question because we tend to go beyond the headlines here and just not discuss just politics because, politics and, the bashing may not necessarily, and I'm not saying that's what you're doing. Okay, let's take this caller first. Caller, good morning. Okay, we lost that caller. Yes. Has the NRP has faced criticisms maybe over the last 4 or 5 years, right? Has the NRP done an assessment, a broad assessment, and I'm not talking about the party itself, I'm talking about the people. Has the NRP done an assessment in the individual constituencies to get a better understanding of what are the challenges impacting the people of Nevis itself? Because there's some criticisms being leveled, and I don't want to say, because this would be my opinion, that those criticisms are correct or they're not necessarily fitting the perspective of an opposition party. But has NRP done any assessment to better understand what is impacting the people? I know you talk about some of your constituency, some of your constituents are, feeling the poverty or in poverty, but generally and broadly across Nevis, has that been done?
But of course, collectively we have done that because I do it in my constituency and the other caretakers do it in their constituencies. The difficulty I have now in responding to you effectively is that I don't know what the criticisms are that you are, for some reason you're shielding me. My back is broad. Share the criticism so that I can respond adequately to these criticisms. Because you would find that sometimes people talk about NRP as if NRP is in government. They expect from NRP the level of performance or to address issues that the government itself should be addressing. And for some reason, like I said, I am at a loss here because I can't adequately respond
Okay,
to the
let's
criticism.
take, for example,
Don't know what they are.
there's one criticism, and this is one that I know came from the premier, that some figures in society, and to an extent the opposition party, and this is just my words here speaking, are just criticizing the administration for criticizing sake, right? And there's some others in society who are also of that opinion that, and I stand to be corrected in terms of the premier's approach, but this is what if this is what he was alluding to. But my interpretation is that there's also some in society who are criticizing the party and saying that instead of just coming to say, okay, this particular policy is not good, that particular policy is not good, that you guys should also reach out and say, okay, the NRP believes that this is the better approach to dealing with this situation. Let's take, for example, the hospital, for example. I know you guys have campaigned on, getting the hospital completed and so forth, but then some are saying that on the flip side of that, you're also criticizing that specifically. So is that fear then? I think should be the question.
It is not fair and neither is it logical. How can we fix a hospital or propose to fix it when we don't know what the issues are? Because the Premier himself has not been forthcoming with the information. He has not been transparent with the information. So he expects us outside of government to fix it? That doesn't make sense. That is not logical. Likewise, we're not just criticizing for criticizing's sake. But what we have found though, this is politics. If I were to say to you now, okay, to fix the hospital, and I have this grandiose idea as to how I can fix it, trust me, the Premier and his cabinet, they are lazy. Lazy to the extent that they just sit back and wait for us to propose solutions. Then they go and they do it. They don't even know, they don't understand the extent of it. They go and try to implement it and then they mock it all up. It has happened. I can give you circumstances that have happened or examples. We would have proposed this is the solution to something, but we're not fools. We must just sit back and supply them with information. They say they have advisors. There's a time and place for everything, and timing in politics is everything, because the premier still has time to maybe slightly redeem himself. And so if I were to propose a solution to something, at this point in time, he's going to just try to implement it. And that is his way of conning you into giving him the solution instead of him investing his intellectual capacity into finding solutions. And we have been saying what could be done too. And then he has been stubborn about those things. Something as fundamental as getting equity for Nevis as it relates to the tax revenue sharing. They have stepped out of an arrangement that was supposed to ensure that Nevis got equity. And for that reason, and I would have compiled some information, some data that I presented on a talk show we had last week, we have lost $181 million because of the premier, the CCM NIA, not conforming to the dictates of the Constitution that says in section 110, St. Kitts and Nevis, pool your monies. Nevis take 26% because that is what percentage of the population we are right now. And because they have not done that, every year we have not been collecting our fair share or our equitable share of the tax revenue of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we have said that. I've pointed out that the first time I entered into politics, I was like, this thing is glaring. We're losing monies here. We're hemorrhaging. Nevis could be better off. And for the past 7 years, we've been wasting time on Nevis with this premier.
But in all fairness, though, the premier and his cabinet has done good work, right? Which has to be acknowledged, right?
St. Kitts? Not over here. Do not, you're being presumptuous here. I don't know if I'm not saying you've never come to Nevis. But the thing is, you have to live here to understand. So do not challenge me on it. Trust me. Do not challenge me on this one. Accept it and come and let us verify. Let us have a walkthrough. Come, let me present to you. Do not defend the premier.
I will take
the indefensible.
Dr. Bartlett, I'll take you up on that offer, right? But in all fairness, though, and depending on which side of the coin you're looking at it from, right? Some may say, he has done good work, and some will say that he's done bad. But I want to dive into something quickly because we're kind of running out of time here. The whole discussion surrounding quote unquote fair share, right? And you touched on a little bit in terms of the taxes there, but what's your perspective on the fact that this discussion has been going on for quite some time about Nevis's fair share since under the former administration, and then we have this current administration, and the discussions are continuing. We now have the World Bank being involved and having their input into this definition of what fair share should look like. Has the NRP been engaged to share their thoughts on what the definition of fair share should be?
Well, to the extent that we can, we've been shouting from all of our platforms. This is what fair share should look like. Let us not just focus on the CBI, because that is volatile as it is. It could be up, it could be down. We have no control over the intake of the CBI. There is a mechanism in place that this section 110 has outlined for us in our constitution since 1983. There's no reason for us to depart from that and expect that we're going to get fair share on anything. If we can't meet that basic and fundamental requirement, and I think it has been CCM NIA to be the ones to breach that provision in the Constitution. And so right now, they don't have a leg to stand on. They don't have any moral authority to argue for fair share. And that is why it has not advanced. Even when they were in a position too, when they were holding the cards, when they had the balance of power in their hands, they did not execute. And why didn't they? Because they would have breached the initial and the fundamental that would have been laid out for us to get fair share.
But has the federal government or the local government engaged the NRP specifically on this particular matter?
Not that I'm aware of, not in an official capacity, because that is how they do. They exclude you. Once you're in opposition, that is where you stay. That is, I don't think that these discussions would have been held with the SKNLP when they were out of government and the unity was there. They were talking about this Charleston Accord as if that was the best thing since sliced bread, something that was not codified, something that was just an arrangement between a few guys. That's what it was. That's why he couldn't advance. But like I said, they lack the moral authority to advance any discussion as it relates to fair share or equity between St. Kitts and Nevis. And that's why they ought to, at this point in time, step aside, because their ego at this point in time has superseded any discussion going forward, because they are not willing to relent. They're not willing to admit that they messed up. And so they don't want to return to the table to say, boy, well, we were wrong. Let us try what the Constitution said. Let us get back to the tax arrangement. Let us get back to the VAT sharing mechanism that was put in place to make sure that Nevis got equity, because we are one as it relates to our economic space. We are an integrated economy, St. Kitts and Nevis. You can't divorce us. I go to St. Kitts to buy stuff that maybe I could get in Nevis too, but that is just the way it is, and we need to acknowledge that. We can't sever that link at this point in time, but we must take advantage of what has been provided for us to get our equity.
I want to ask you just quickly, because we have just about 3 minutes left on the program, and I want you to give a wrap. But what is your position? What do you believe can be the solution to defining what this quote-unquote fair share should look like? Should it be based on population size per rata? Should it be a case where there's a fixed amount, regardless, 20%, 25% of the CBI? Do you think something like that should be standardized, regardless? So if this year St. Kitts and Nevis makes $500 million of the CBI program, there should be 45% for Nevis, 50% for St. Kitts, 5% in a sustainable fund or something like that?
Well, I do believe the first thing we need to do is to establish our sovereign wealth fund, and a percentage goes to that before you start sharing between St. Kitts and Nevis. After you would have taken out the monies that go into this sovereign wealth fund that is secured, then we start applying the pro rata mechanism based on the population between St. Kitts and Nevis. As it is now, from the last census, it shows that Nevis occupies 26% of that critical mass. So 26% for Nevis, and we move forward. Of course, we cannot ignore the fact that there are expenditure that ought to be considered in the whole mix for those things that we share. And that is something that when we moved away from what the Constitution had dictated that we should, we moved away from that. So police services, fire, whatever, security, national security, those elements that we ought to be contributing to, we ought not to think that we're going to get a free ride in Nevis. So those have to be taken care of. But like I said, Section 110 had already made provisions for that. I don't see any reason why we had to go to the World Bank. As far as I'm concerned, that was just a waste of time. Waste of time, because the Governor General has a place to play, a part to play in this scheme as well, because the Section 110 spoke to that eloquently. And so I don't see why we had to, but I understand that some people would rather kick the can down the road and pick it up and deal with what is in the can. And that has been the response that we've had during the unity government, and now with the SKNLP, the same response, nothing different. We're going to go to the World Bank to tell us how to share something. I mean, simple maths. Simple maths.
Okay, Dr. Bartlett, we're kind of out of time right now, so I'll give you a chance to give, a little bit of a wrap in terms of being on the program, or what you want people to hear.
Well, it was a pleasure to be here, and I would just encourage the people on St. Kitts in particular to tune in to our 2020 radio on Nevis. I know this is probably beyond the protocol that you established on your program, but since you gave me the opportunity, because that's the only how they're going to hear us, because you have enough going on St. Kitts. But if people really want to know what's going on in Nevis, you can't stay in St. Kitts and listen to the premier, because it is established that he's chief liar, and so we cannot
Okay.
believe half of what he says, and you don't want to hear that kind of thing for whatever reason. And so I would, at this point, I would discontinue that line. But I'm thankful that you gave us the opportunity to share with the people of St. Kitts, and I would encourage all of us to start living like brothers and sisters. Make sure Nevis people get their fair share, and we will all live good.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Bartlett. There you had it. That was the Nevis Reformation Party's Dr. Patricia Bartlett joining us there right now to, yes, giving her perspective on what's happening locally, regionally, and internationally. We do thank Dr. Bartlett for joining us. And that was today's edition of Inside the News. I was Jeremy Abel, your host for today. So, yes, it was really good to be in your company today. Do join us again next week, where we continue with more Inside the News, where we yes, so that was today's edition of Inside the News. I was Jeremy Abel, your host for today as usual. Do join us again next week, where we will be joined by the Chief Executive Director of Caribbean Export, and we'll be talking small business and how small businesses in St. Kitts and Nevis can benefit from Caribbean export. Until next time, do join us to enjoy your weekend. Goodbye.